We're back, baby. Not that we went anywhere.
This is the worst.
Mota Zitabanakis. Welcome into the worst fantasy show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. We are still drafting, literally this morning, getting a couple last lineups in on Underdog. I just took David Njoku. But yes, we are answering some Sunday morning questions today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We will prioritize comments ahead of the questions, but otherwise we will also be answering questions, of course, like always, from Fantasy Sports Advice Network. If you guys haven't checked it out by now, please head on over there. It's my buddy Tyler's site. It's basically a social media for just fantasy sports without like all the extra BS. So you can sign up for free, check it out. So feel free to head on over. But otherwise, let's get into some Sunday questions.
Riddle me this, Batman.
So while I'm still knocking out this last draft pick here, deciding between Deontay Johnson and Jordan Addison myself, I saw a banger question drop right before the show. I thought it was a really difficult question. It's just a straight up quarterback. Would you start today Baker Mayfield or Jordan Love? And I mean, you're talking about two hot quarterbacks, two top 10 fantasy quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, I think, is leading the NFL in touchdowns right now. And they both have great matchups. The Baltimore Ravens, even though it's a good defense, absolute pass funnel. You can definitely throw the ball on the Ravens, especially they seem to give it up late in garbage time. So I like Baker Mayfield, but I think like one of the only quarterback plays I really like today more than Baker is Jordan Love at home against the Houston Texans, who are a little bit beat up. I think Love is going to be throwing and pushing the ball down the field. So I'm really excited for that game. But yeah, I honestly, I'm like super torn. I think both are excellent plays, but I lean Jordan Love by a nut hair. Literally, like, I think this is coin toss. When you get here's actually a secret method of deciding things for you guys. And it really is just telling you what internally you want. If you have a 50-50 decision, it actually doesn't matter if it's fantasy football or just life in general. This is a neat little trick. Take a coin, right, and do a coin flip and call, like, assign, obviously, like, you know, in this case, we would say Baker Mayfield is heads, Jordan Love is tails, okay? And so you take the coin and you flip it, right? You do your coin flip, and then the result doesn't matter, okay? What happens is, when the coin is in the air, in your heart of hearts, which side were you hoping it landed on? That's who you pick. And that's how you make that's how I generally have made some pretty hefty life decisions in terms of 50-50, when you're really like weighing pros and cons and it kind of just everything, you know, weighs out even. Flip a coin. And it doesn't matter what the result is. It's really just, you know, when you assigned the heads and tails, what happened in the air? What did your heart tell you? Were you hoping it landed on Baker or were you hoping it landed on Love? And if you were hoping for Love, then you play Love. If you're hoping for Baker, you play Baker. But in my humble estimations, I would play Jordan Love. We already got a question in the chat. What's up, Dylan Fink? What's up, full PPR, different leagues? Start one wide receiver, one tight end. Rashad Bateman, Jalen Waddle, Parkinson, and Likely. Wow, that's rough business, eh? So I always go with, also, this is team dependent. So like, and you don't have to give me the whole gist of your entire team. I'm just saying, if the rest of your team is really solid and you're just looking for a couple floor plays here, even though Bateman has been somewhat sustainable, quietly consistent, I'm still going with Jalen Waddle. The matchup is there. I know the quarterback play hasn't been, but the matchup with Indianapolis is too good to ignore. That gives me a little bit of a floor. And I may have to temper my expectations for Waddle. And that's actually going to make me decide Isaiah Likely. Because obviously, Parkinson is going to get you 5 to 8, and that's like his absolute ceiling. Whereas Isaiah Likely, we all know, is he can get 0, 2 points, but he can also get you 15 to 20 points. I'm looking for that spike week from the tight end because I know that neither of these wide receivers have the real potential to give me a monster spike week. I'm going to take the guy that I think is just more talented with the better matchup in Jalen Waddle, because actually shout out to Todd Bowles, former defensive backs coordinator who ascended to defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is his speciality, and the Bucs defense quietly underrated in my opinion. So I would go with Waddle and likely for pure upside, knowing that very potential you get an absolute floor. And then your next one was start 1 wide receiver, 2 flex. Oh, we're deep diving here. Jordan Whittington. I'm assuming this is Christian Kirk, Khalil Shakir, Dearness Johnson, and Tyler Goodson. So Trey Sermon sucks, but he still got 18 carries, and I'm pretty sure he's active. I'd have to double check that. If for some reason he was inactive, maybe Goodson, but I think Goodson is really a tertiary play. I think I'm going with Christian Kirk, and I'm super closely monitoring the Cooper Kupp situation, because if Cooper Kupp is still out this week, I'll go with Jordan Jordan Whittington. He's just been getting a shit ton of targets. He's actually, it's funny because he's not like Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. He's actually more of a Robert Woods character. He is very much like a Bobby Trees light. So he's getting targets, and if Cooper Kupp's not there, I would take Whittington. If Cooper Kupp plays, I think you could still play Whittington, but it definitely feels like more of a floor. And then it's, again, you're monitoring is Travis Etienne out. You really have to monitor injuries here, because I would play Dearness Johnson above Whittington, assuming Etienne is inactive and Kupp is active. But if Kupp is inactive, I'm playing Whittington over Dearness Johnson, even if Etienne is inactive, because he's still going to be sharing with Tank Bigsby. So just I'll give you more of a ranking system. Again, I'm looking at this as my locked-in player is I'm going with Christian Kirk. He's the starter. It's a decent matchup. I'm just going to play the starter and, hope for the best. But then the other I would have is Whittington, and then Dearness Johnson. Again, dependent on is Kupp out, is Etienne out, and then Shakir, and then Goodson. Again, unless Trey Sermon was out, and then Goodson would rise to third, I think, on that list for me. Long-winded answer for the second one, but that's a real deep dive. Honestly, I'm probably just going Whittington, Kirk, and Dearness Johnson, but I might go with Shakir. Unless, like I said, Trey Sermon's out, then I'll go Goodson. It's the third one that's more shaky. All right, we got a couple questions. Full PPR, who to start at running back, Kareem Hunt or Austin Eckler? I'm taking the matchup, pure matchup, and it's full PPR. Eckler's involved in the receiving game. It's gross. Hunt could very well have a good game, but with CEH now active and back, I think it cramps his style a little bit. And I think he was also dealing with an injury, which he'll still play and get, I think, the majority of the carries, but San Francisco. So it's a tough matchup too. Whereas Austin Eckler playing the Carolina Panthers, that's a much softer matchup, obviously. I think both running backs, Brian Robinson is active. I think him and Eckler can both eat against this Panthers defense. I'm going with Eckler there. All right, let's see what else we got. Aaron Jones, Zamir White, or Antonio Gibson. Good Lord. Yeah, this is where we are in fantasy football in week 7, guys. Assuming Aaron Jones plays, even if he's limited, I'm taking him over these other two cats. Like a limited Aaron Jones is better than a full Zamir White and Antonio Gibson at this point. And I really don't like the matchup for the Patriots. I think it's a bit of a trap. I know the Jaguars have looked like shit, and I know their defense has been terrible, but they have been in London for 2 weeks, and the Patriots are having to travel there this week. So we'll see how much that plays a factor. We'll see early too, because we're going to see it in 20 minutes Eastern Standard Time. But I'm going with Aaron Jones. I'm just assuming he plays. And if Aaron Jones is out, I know it's been horrible, but I'm still going with Zamir White over Antonio Gibson. He's going to share with Alex Madison, but I'm just going to take purely the guy who practiced in full and has a better matchup in my estimation. I could understand wanting to go Gibson. I mean, I watched the dude. I have Antonio Gibson in a league, and I had to play him. It's Scott Fishbowl. It's really deep, and waivers aren't that accessible. And I have Ramondre Stevenson, so I had acquired Antonio Gibson. I can't remember if he's like a last round draft pick or I got him off free agency, but it was like a handcuff because running backs are very valuable in that league. And I had to play him last week, and it was dog shit. So maybe I'm a little biased too, but and again, Zamir White has been god awful this whole season, so I get that. Should I start Hill or Worthy? I'm assuming this is Tyreek Hill or Xavier Worthy. If it's Taysom Hill, I would definitely start Worthy over Taysom Hill, but Tyreek, I know it's been bad. I would still start Tyreek Hill over Xavier Worthy. Yes, maybe Xavier Worthy pops for a touchdown or two against the Niners on the road. That feels like more of a long shot. Hill still had 10 targets, even in the like he's the guy. When you have a real bad quarterback, generally speaking, like they'll target one guy, and Tyreek Hill is that guy. That's why Jalen Waddle makes me a lot more nervous, but Tyreek Hill is still going to get his targets. Ooh, we got a trade question here. Half PPR. Do I trade AJ Brown, but for Brian Thomas Jr., Evan Ingram, and either James Conner or Aaron Jones? Ooh. And then for context, he dropped his team. Yeah, his running backs, he has Josh Jacobs, and then it's like Jordan Mason dealing with an AC strain. He is active and should play. We'll see how well he plays against the Niners defense. He has Jerome Ford, who is now a dead asset and basically droppable. He has Emmanuel Wilson, that's a handcuff to Josh Jacobs, Ty Chandler, and Isaac Guerrero. So very thin at running back. I can see why he would want to make this move. And then even at wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, those are two underperforming assets. Jamison Williams, Puka Nacua on IR, and DeAndre Hopkins. So he's got 3 wide receivers really not doing well. This is very rare. I am very rarely on the 3-for-1 side where I'm going to take the 3 players for the 1. It's almost always a bad deal. If someone's sending you 3 players for 1 or 2 players for 1, even, it's usually junk for like one of your best players. And it's like a hilarious trope in fantasy football. But I'm looking at this team. First of all, I'm looking at Brian Thomas Jr. as an ascending asset who has already exceeded expectations this year and is a very good wide receiver. Not as good as AJ Brown, but it's not like a crazy step down from AJ Brown to BTJ. Like you're going from a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2. But in the process, you're picking up Evan Ingram, who's finally healthy, and you're picking up James Conner, I think, is the one I would be targeting there because for 2 reasons. One, Aaron Jones already dealing with his own injuries, but James Conner is just so solid. But it's also that whoever drafted Trey Benson, the Trey Benson drafters out there, I would say most of them have gotten extremely impatient and dropped him. I've seen him dropped in leagues where I was not the one. Because if I the leagues that I drafted him, I'm biting that bullet, and he's staying on my roster all year. I'll eat that dead spot all year to be wrong about it. I you can't give up. You can't surrender. No, it's a little bit of take lock. But I do think I never intended for him to be used in the first half of the season. And I very rarely make those kind of moves. In fact, I generally advise against them in fantasy because of exactly this. Like especially if you thought you were being smart by taking Blake Corum and Trey Benson, you've basically had 2 dead spots on your roster all year, or you were forced to drop them. So, and honestly, it's like, even though he's been on your IR, what's his face? Jonathan Brooks hasn't helped any either, and he isn't coming back as soon as people think either. So now that's 3 of the top rookie running backs that were basically duds, absolute zeros for fantasy in terms of redraft value. So that's maybe something to remember for next year. But I'm getting a little long-winded here. I'm just saying. So the fact that Trey Benson is easily acquirable to the person that would have James Conner in theory, right? If James Conner were to go down, and you're getting so much depth here where it's like, yeah, you can drop Ford. The thing too is you always have to look, who do you have to drop to make this trade go through? So you're dropping Ford, that's locked. And then yeah, I mean, you're keeping Tyreek, Ayuk, Jameson, Puka's on IR, so you don't have to worry about that. DeAndre Hopkins, they just made the quarterback change to Mason Rudolph finally. They're calling it a shoulder injury. I think it's a this guy sucks injury, but they're finally playing Mason Rudolph this week. We'll see if that's better for the wide receivers. If it's not, DeAndre Hopkins is droppable at this point. But I think, again, if Aaron Jones is back this week, I think you can drop Ty Chandler and get him back. I would keep the 49ers running backs, Mason and Garendo, together. And I would want to keep the handcuff for Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson. So to me, Ty Chandler is the odd man out there to make this trade go through. And I'm getting James Conner, I'm getting BTJ, and I'm getting an upgrade for my tight end, theoretically. So I would actually make this trade. Very rarely, again, do I do the 3-for-1 where I'm the one getting the 3 players, but I see the 2 drops on my team. I see the need to make this trade because not only do I have injured assets, I've got underperforming assets. I need a shake up in the worst kind of way. And I think this gives me a lot of depth across the overall team that potentially could turn my team around. Again, James Conner, an easy RB2. BTJ, an easy wide receiver 2, and Ingram, when he's on the field, an easy tight end 1. So, again, very rarely am I giving up A.J. Brown, but that's a very fair trade for a team that needs the depth. So I would actually make that move. We got a question from Jacob Ringhand. Hunter Henry or Mark Andrews, full PPR? Oh, man. Oh, I really hate that I think the answer is Hunter Henry. I do think, even though I'm expecting the Jaguars defense to play above expectations today, I really think that they're going to do a lot better than people think today, because maybe I'm overestimating the London effect. The idea that the Jaguars have been in London for 2 weeks now, and this is very much a home matchup because they are the unofficial London team. And you have the Patriots coming over, and they're a young team, are the Patriots. I do think that, yeah, in my heart of hearts, I think it's Hunter Henry. It scares me because Mark Andrews is still the name value play, but we've seen this year. It's like he had the one good game last week, and it was 3 for 60 and a tutty. And it's funny because I called that game because it's just the nature of the fantasy gods. They're fickle. Everyone was calling for the Mark Andrews game the week before, and then when it didn't happen, nobody was calling for it last week. And so I was like, oh, of course, guys, this is the Mark Andrews week, I'm telling you. And of course, it was the Mark Andrews week because, again, it's just how fantasy works. They're fickle. Fickle beasts are the fantasy gods. I do think Hunter Henry is the better matchup, and I think he is just more prominent in his offense. I think the quarterback is going to be looking for him. Yeah, I mean, I could just as easily be wrong. Tight end is so ridiculous that like it is very much a coin flip, even though Mark Andrews is the name. But I think I personally would go with Hunter Henry. Try to galaxy brain it maybe a little bit, but I think it's Hunter Henry. All right, we got Peter Zhu in the comments. Brandon Ayuk or Juju Smith Schuster? I got a sneaky feeling about Brandon Ayuk. I know he's been really terrible all year. This feels like a Brandon Ayuk week. It just feels like they need him to step up against the Kansas City Chiefs. You assume that the new guy, it's not L'Jarius Sneed anymore. I think it's Shamari Connor is the new guy, the defensive back that's been doing really well for the Chiefs is the primary. You would assume, though, he's going to see a lot of like Debo Samuel and George Kittle, and maybe Brandon Ayuk's the one that gets a little bit lost in the sauce here. I know Jawan Jennings is supposed to be out, I think, and they're debuting Ricky Pearsall. If Ricky Pearsall outperforms Brandon Ayuk this week, I think it's not over for Brandon Ayuk, but like you're gonna be pissed, and Brandon Ayuk managers are gonna be in full panic if that happens. But I don't think it does. I think this is the Brandon Ayuk week. I think Juju dealing with his own injuries. He's supposed to play, but he was questionable all week. Probably just maybe veteran rest. But a tough matchup on the road against the Niners. Again, I know Brandon Ayuk is severely underperformed. I will say that I've thrown him into a couple of my best ball lineups. Just kind of, again, sneaky feeling maybe. I think for me, I'm still going with Brandon Ayuk here. I view him as a more talented player than Juju, obviously, at this stage of their careers. I think the problem for Ayuk is very much one of not necessarily motivation, but again, the idea that like, well, Debo's got it, Kittle's got it, and the running backs have got it, whether it's Jordan Mason or Isaac Guerrero, just the way they kind of scheme things. But this is a big game for them. I think the Niners, again, are going to be wanting to step up in the Super Bowl rematch, and I'm hoping that Brandon Ayuk has another breakout game, kind of similar to the one good game that he had this year, and I think that's going to happen. That's just, again, my sneaky feeling, so I'm going with Brandon Ayuk personally. Oh, my God. This is maybe the worst quarterback question in the history of quarterback questions, but I'm assuming this has to be some kind of super flex question. If you're in a single quarterback and this is your actual decision, give up legitimately. Like you'd have to be in like a 30-team league for this to be your decision, but I'm assuming this is, and actually, you know what? This is actually a very good lesson to be learned right here for a second. Let us pretend it is a super flex. It's super flex, not I have to start a quarterback in this spot. Like unless it's a 2 quarterback league and it says QB, like the idea of a super flex is you can put another position in there. You do not have to be beholden to the idea that, oh, it's a super flex and I have to put a quarterback in that spot. If your quarterback is one of the 2 names I'm about to read off for this starter sit, then you should just be starting your best running back or wide receiver instead in that super flex spot. But the names, my friends, are Ty Huntley or Deshaun Watson, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. Oh my God. To answer the question, Voldemort, legitimately, like as bad as it's been, it hasn't been as bad as Ty Huntley, who does have a theoretically better matchup, but not really because the Bengals defense has been underwhelming and you can pass on them. And I think I actually am predicting that the Browns win this game, having nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. I think if Nick Chubb is supposed to make his debut, as far as I know, if that comes true and comes through, I think the Browns win this game on the emotional, like the emotional factor, the intangible of Nick Chubb's return. I really do. I think the whole team tries just that little bit more. I think Deshaun Watson has had very they've been short. They've been like half a quarter long, but he's had flashes where he'll string together 10 good passes. I think he is, a broken clock is right twice a day. And I think this might be that day for Deshaun Watson. And I would take that upside over Ty Huntley. Just the idea that the Browns may be getting a little bit of a shootout. Maybe this turns into a little bit more of a high-scoring game than we think. Again, the emotional motivation and factor of the return of Nick Chubb and how that potentially boosts the entire team for this game. Maybe it's a bit of a come-up game, like a get-up game for the Browns. So if I'm forced to choose, it's Deshaun Watson. But again, you don't have to start a quarterback in your super flex, guys. If you have a really good wide receiver or a running back option that you can put there instead, do that. But yeah, final answer, play Voldemort and hope that this is the rise of the Dark Age. Jesus. All right. Which defense should I play this week? I have the Commanders currently playing against the Panthers. So I'm just he listed the free agent defenses. So I'll just give you some of the highlights here that in my estimation. So again, I talked about already. I think the sneaky matchup is the Jaguars against the Patriots. Obviously, Drake May is a rookie. He's capable of having some good plays. He's also very capable of having some bad plays. He had like 200 for 2 last week, but he also had 2 or 3 interceptions as far as I know. I can definitely see the Jaguars winning this game based on a defensive touchdowns rule in terms of defensive scoring for fantasy football. So I'm looking at potential, again, teams that could maybe score a touchdown. I think the Jaguars are a decent enough bet. I think the Rams against the Raiders. They're at home. The Rams have been very beat up, but the Raiders, having just lost Devontae Adams, going to be relying solely on a rookie tight end, Brock Bowers. And Aiden O'Connell is going to be in there. I think he is solid, but he is just an average quarterback. So I think the Rams defense could potentially take advantage there. So I like the Jags. I like the Rams. And I actually like both of those plays ahead of Washington. As good as Washington's been, Andy Dalton is definitely the type of quarterback that can take advantage of them, I think. And I think this could definitely be like a 40-20 game where neither defense is really that relevant for fantasy football. Maybe I'm wrong. They have been a little bit better as of late, but for me, I actually would rank it. It's scary, but I think it's the Jags because they've been so underperforming. They have all the pieces to be a good defense, and this could be a get-up game for them again. They've looked like, they've looked really, really bad. But for me, again, Jags, Rams, Commanders. I have it in that order. I think you'd have to really you have to run to get it in 2 minutes. And so you're probably not going to get the Jags, and maybe that ends up being a blessing in disguise. So I actually think I would go with the Rams over the Manders. I just see more assets on the Panthers. Like Chuba Hubbard could have a good game. Deontay Johnson is going to play. Xavier Legette has been ascending. And then I look at the Raiders. Jacoby Myers is doubtful. So it's Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, and not much else. The running backs are Zamir White and Alexander Madison. Like, I'm laughing saying it out loud. The offense for the Raiders is atrocious right now. So yeah, I'm going with the Rams streamer, I think, ahead of the Manders. Ooh, here's I like this question. Would you trade Brandon Ayuk for Najee Harris? And he posted his team. So he is the Brandon Ayuk manager. He seems to be looking to acquire Najee Harris. So I know Najee hasn't been that great, but that's actually an astute move because Najee's never that great in the first half of the season. He's really, you want to talk about a running back that is very relevant in November and December as compared to September and October is Najee Harris. That's been the story on him like his entire career. Plus, he's been dealing with a couple of injuries early in the season. But he's got a lock on that starting job, and in an Arthur Smith offense, he's He's the wet dream of Arthur Smith. Like the whole reason they brought in Arthur Smith was to reinvent the Steelers' power offense. I hate that they're starting Russell Wilson. I also hope that that in the next couple of weeks that stupid project is over and we're back to Justin Fields. But I think I'm looking at his team. So he's got at the running back position Josh Jacobs, Jordan Mason, and then there's a bit of a drop off. Again, it's Ty Chandler, Jerome Ford, Isaac Guerrero, and Emmanuel Wilson. So, and then his wide receiver. Oh, this is actually probably the same guy who asked the AJ Brown trade earlier. So then he has AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins. So in this scenario, he would be keeping AJ Brown. So would we rather do the trade from earlier or this? Ayuk for Najee Harris straight up, or the one we were talking about earlier, which was AJ Brown for BTJ Ingram and James Conner. Me personally, I would still rather do that deal. I know you're giving up a better wide receiver in AJ Brown, but I think it just covers more holes on your team, especially because now doubling back to look at his tight end situation, he has two tight ends that he's holding on to right now. It's Jake Ferguson, who's really good, but the other one is Dalton Schultz, who is, you could drop him essentially. I think it covers more spots for his team. You have James Conner in the running back spot, and then you have BTJ replacing AJ Brown, and then you upgrade Dalton Schultz to Evan Ingram. I like that. I don't hate either trade. If you really are insistent on keeping AJ Brown, then you do the Ayuk trade instead. I think Ayuk for Najee is fine. I do think Ayuk is going to – I think that's a win-win. That's a rare win-win where you find the team that needs a wide receiver and you need a running back, and you just trade them. And especially two guys that are both underperforming that should have better second halves of the season. So you both get to be like, hey, my guy's doing well. And the other guy's like, hey, my guy's doing well now too. And you both get to just be happy about the trade that you made because it helped both your teams. Like, yeah, that's great. That's a win-win trade. All right, a couple quick questions, and then we'll get on out of here. Let's go watch some London football. Also, I'm going to be on a show at 12 o'clock. It starts at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. My guy Chris Parrish, the Imperishable podcast. He does also wrestling and football, so we'll be chatting probably some pro wrestling and some fantasy football. All right, quick fire. Goff or Stroud? I'm going Stroud. Goff or Purdy? I'm going Goff. Superflex, Geno Smith or Matt Stafford? I'm going Geno Smith. Jordan Mason, Brandon Ayuk. Who would you start in the flex? Damn, that AC joint really scared me, and I've got the sneaky feeling about Ayuk. We're going with Ayuk. That guy's in. Oh, well, that made it easy. Juju Smith or Jacoby Myers? Jacoby Myers is out, so you go with Juju. Is Nick Chubb worth starting? Yes, depending on your options. I mean, again, if you're starting Antonio Gibson, Nick Chubb is worth starting. I would start Nick Chubb over very low-level handcuff tertiary options that you're just praying get to their floor. I would start Nick Chubb over those guys. Pick three running backs: Hunt, Hubbard, Gibbs, Jacobs, or Connor. I mean, easy. Gibbs, Jacobs, and Gibbs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Chuba Hubbard. Ooh, the last one's hard. Marvin Harrison Jr. is back playing. Ooh, I like Josh Jacobs' matchup. I think Jacobs very viable. Yeah, all right. Final answer. Gibbs, Hubbard, Jacobs. Boom. We need one for a full flex PPR. Josh Downs, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jordan Addison. Ooh, that's a tough one. Anthony Richardson should be playing today, so I'm going to go with Jordan Addison for the upside. I think Wandale is the floor, though. So if you need a floor play, go with Wandale. If you need an upside play, go with Addison. Thoughts on this trade? Oh, on the surface, this looks terrible, but it's Zamir White and Ramondre Stevenson for DeAndre Hopkins, Jerome Ford, and Puka Nacua. So Jerome Ford, dead asset. DeAndre Hopkins has no value when Will Levis is playing quarterback, but if Mason Rudolph can get things going, maybe resurrects a little bit of value. And Puka Nacua obviously is on IR, and we're not exactly sure when he's going to come back. You get two running backs. Zamir White severely underperforming. Ramondre Stevenson started hot, kind of cooled off a little bit. Should still have some more games. I mean, if you need the running backs right now, yeah, I mean, I don't hate the Zamir White Ramondre side. It kind of gross. I think it's also savvy to be, if you're in a position where you can give away Ramondre and Zamir White and you can acquire DeAndre and Puka and throw Puka on your IR, drop Jerome Ford, and maybe open up a waiver spot. I don't hate that. All right. Let's get here we go. Half PPR. Would you trade Jamison Williams for Rico Dowdle? Yes, I would. If you need a running back, I don't mind Rico Dowdle. I think he is, at this point, firmly entrenched as the starter for the rest of the year. I don't think Zeke is going to be taking it from him. As much as I like Oompa Loompa Deuce Vaughn, I don't think he has emerged as the Darren Sproles-esque figure that I predicted he could be. So I think Rico Dowdle is a very safe RB2 for the rest of the season. And as much as I like Jamison Williams, if you can afford to give up that depth, then I think Rico Dowdle is a better consistent play, and especially with the state of just running backs in general. I like Dowdle a little bit more than JMO. He's also a little more consistent. All right. That's it for the Fantasy Sports Advice Network questions. Again, super appreciate you guys stopping by this morning. We will be back Monday live. We're back to the live shows, guys. Monday and Thursday, I'll be doing live hearts and farts reactions and then getting you ready for week 8. Otherwise, you guys can check me out later today, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, like I said, on the Chris Parrish podcast on YouTube. Just type in Chris Parrish, it'll come up, Perish. And one more thing too, the wrestling show, it's running late, but I am going to try and get it up today. I've got an idea for a video, so keep an eye out. You might see a wrestling video drop later today. But otherwise, best of luck on all of your Sunday matchups. Hope you guys have a really good fantasy day, and I'll catch you all on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes